Hello, AdCom 400. This is Scott Stebner, and I'm the graduate teaching assistant for Dr. Baker. And I'm here today to go over some design principles and creating, using, and implementing graphics into your analytical report, mainly using Excel. So I'm really excited today to go over this information, and I think it's going to be really relevant to you guys and hopefully really help you out as you try to not just convey information in your document, an analytical report, but also a big step of that is doing so in an attractive way that's going to hold the reader's interests. So with that being said, let's go through today's objectives for this lesson. So the first thing is we're going to apply 5 design principles to your analytical report. And we're going to look at how your whole report should flow around these 5 design principles. Also, we're going to identify which types of graphics to use in order to convey the data that you've researched. And lastly, we're going to go over a few tips in Excel to create these documents. You can use any program you'd like, but Excel is a very easy, very simple and straightforward program that it does help you create some graphics, charts, tables that are going to do a great job of conveying your information. So let's get into the 5 principles of design. And these principles are pretty much guidelines to help you create a document that's visually appealing. You could do the greatest job on the planet of creating some great information and doing due diligence in your research and writing it very well. But you also have to bring in this other element into the mix where it discusses the aesthetics of your document. So these 5 principles of design are going to help minimize any distractions that come with the overall aesthetic design of your document that doesn't take over from the information but does a great job in enhancing it and benefiting it. It kind of serves as a partner to the great writing that you've done. So let's get into these 5 principles of design. The first is balance. The best way to take a look at this is also maybe the word proportional. And this refers to as you look at the document from the top to the bottom and to the left to the right, you want everything to be balanced, I guess. You don't want all the information to be on the upper left of the page and the bottom right to seem lacking or have a bunch of empty space. Conversely, you don't want all the information in the bottom center and then the top to be lacking. So as you start the design of your document, there's a lot of templates that also you can utilize. Make sure that you're focusing on balance, that nothing seems out of place. And the next is alignment. So images and words on the page are aligned to show the document's structure or hierarchy. And the best way to kind of put this is it should give your eye some purpose to moving. So for example, when we refer to hierarchy, put some of the more important information in a sequential manner. Structure your document so it moves the eye throughout the page. A lot of people refer to actually a Z shape too. You can have your document, you start reading on the upper left of the page and your eye will follow a Z shape as it goes down the page. And also grouping is a really important aspect of designing. And this means that related images and words are placed near each other or on the page. So for example, if you want to bring in a visual image or a chart, place that next to the text that is also talking about. It's all about not confusing the reader and having the reader spend as little mental energy as possible trying to find the information and how it's all related. So group similar objects, group similar charts together, and it's really going to help organize your document. Consistency is a huge aspect of design. You don't want your design to look like it's all over the place. It's going to confuse your readers, and it just doesn't scream professional. And when we talk about consistency, this is mainly in design features in the document are used consistently so the document looks uniform. That's the big thing. You want it to look cohesive. So for example, this could include colors, sticking with a dominant color theme or color pattern. A lot of the templates that you find will have this already in there. You can also find if you're like me and don't quite get how colors go together at times, you can work with Adobe. You can Google also different color patterns to kind of help you out with this. Font is another big aspect of consistency. You'll find a lot of designers out there saying stick to no more than two fonts, maximum three, but I would really recommend sticking with only two types of fonts. And also if you're going to bring in different textures and everything else. So another thing to keep in mind is if you're going for a specific mood or a specific feel, just really try to stay within that. But once again, I cannot emphasize enough sticking to basic color patterns. And really, you shouldn't be using any more than two types of basic fonts. And try not to go too crazy on some of the custom fonts out there, for example, like rope text or papyrus font or anything like that. And pay attention to things like sans serif and serif on your fonts. And it'll really, I think, bring in a good cohesion to your document. Also, contrast is a great way of highlighting information or specific terms, and contrast really creates an impact if you take a look at it that way. And so items in a document that are different look significantly different. This can be huge in your header or a chart or things like that where you utilize different colors that'll really stand out from the rest of the document to really create an impact. If you're going to do a graphic, it's for a reason, so why don't you have that graphic stand out using contrast? So the next thing we're going to discuss is a thumbnail for your design. So let's take a look at creating a thumbnail design for your report. So when you design your analytical report, these are the things that should be included. Number one is a side brief or a sidebar or an in brief. If you take a look at page 273, it gives a good example about this. What a sidebar does is it just places the main points or the points that are really important within the document in a section that stands out for the reader to see. And the best way I could say this and make an analogy is to compare it to a movie trailer. If you see a movie trailer, you have a general idea of what the main point is of the movie, the actors, kind of what's going on, and maybe a setting. And by watching the trailer and you go a few weeks later to see the movie, you kind of know what's going to happen and nothing's really too much of a surprise. You're going into the movie knowing a little bit of background to prepare you for it. Well, that's kind of the same way for this. The reader is going to see the brief and say, okay, I generally have an idea of what's going on in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and read the report. So you shouldn't get into too much detail, mainly summarizing the main points. Don't keep it too long. Once again, this is just an in-brief preparation for the reader to understand what happened or what's going on inside your document. Headings are also a big part of this. Once again, your book does a good example of describing it. Columns. Most of your reports are going to be 2 to 3 columns. I really want to caution you against just having one column like you would write out an essay. Not only is it visually boring and not very professional, but it also is going to be a little exhausting to read. Breaking things into columns is going to help the reader's eye flow through the document a lot better. So 2 to 3 columns is definitely recommended. Whether you choose 2 or whether you choose 3, it's pretty much a personal preference based on kind of what you're going to be doing with your graphics and layout design. And also title. Your title should be clear and definitely relevant to the topic and placed at the top. Avoid being too lengthy. Once again, it should be just clear and straight to the point in your analytical report. And on top of these 4 suggestions, you might want to consider the following. Once again, most are 2 columns. You can use 3 if you'd like, but once again, 2 is pretty standard, and some people use 3. Headers and footers can definitely help bringing out more clarification when needed. And borders, if you're going to use a border, keep it simple. There's a lot of prepackaged border designs that can be very fancy, but also can detract from the professionalism of your document. Those borders were just created kind of for fun for Word. Some are great in a professional environment, and some really should not be. So use your caution, go back to those design principles of balance and unity and contrast, and kind of use your best judgment on that. And then white space. White space can be a great thing in a document because it can really highlight what you do include. However, you don't want to be on either extreme. You don't want to have so little white space that the document seems cluttered. You don't want to have too much white space or empty space where it seems empty. So just pay attention to that as you're designing a document, just to make sure that once you're going with that balance theme we talked about earlier. And once again, design examples are on page 273 and 306 of your book. So which graphic do I use? You guys will be needing to use graphics in your analytical reports to demonstrate what's going on. And not all graphics are the same. For example, a bar chart might not work in some instances where a flow chart would. So if you're wanting to show a trend or demonstrate a trend over time, you'd use a line graph, and this shows really how a quantity rises and falls over time. The good example of this is usually see these in stock reports in NASDAQ or cattle prices or anything that's once again going to show a trend over time. But if you want to compare two or more quantities together, a bar chart is going to be great. And bar charts are great because they really bring in a comparison between different items or the same items over time. So for example, if you wanted to compare the yields per acre of organic versus conventional agricultural crops, the bar chart would be a great way to visually display that information. If you want to present data or facts for analysis and comparison, a table is going to be great. And tables are great because they're incredibly organized, easy to read, and allows the reader to go through the information presented and select some things out. You can also do some things in tables to really highlight the information as well. And once again, Excel, as we'll go through, has some great ways to do that. If you want to show how a system is divided into parts or how something has different parts, different percentages, a pie chart is going to be great. And there's plenty of different options about pie charts, expanded, three-dimensional, use your professional opinion for those. And once again, a pie chart shows data as a pie carved into slices. So these can be really easy to read. One of the issues you might fall into is labeling the pieces of the pie chart. Sometimes if you have too many slices of the pie, so to say, that some of the text can be pretty small. So just be cognizant of that as you go through and utilize pie charts for those of you who want to use this type of graphic, that it is still readable to the reader. Flowcharts are also another really good graphic to use if you want to really show how things, people, or steps are linked together. A flowchart works great, and it illustrates connections among people, parts, or steps. So for those of you who are really trying to create a report on steps to something, how something's done, or connections, this could be a good graph for you. And also, the next one would be needing to show how a project will meet its goals over time. This would display a project schedule, highlighting the phases of the work. Don't see a ton of these, but they do definitely exist in analytical reports. So let's go over some charts you can create in Excel. So let's go over how to make a pie chart in Excel. And it's actually incredibly simple once you get the hang of it. So I'll demonstrate the steps in just a second on Excel. But the first thing you're going to do is going to select your categories, frequencies, the information that you're going to use for your pie chart. So this should include the variable or the item, for example, senior, freshman, sophomore, and junior, and also the percentages. So 5%, 30, 30, 35. Then you're going to go through, and it's just a matter of finding the right steps in the Excel document. So let's take a look at how to do that. So I'm going to pull up Excel, and hopefully you can follow it on the screen. And this is actually some old data from some YouTube analytics that I was doing for a project. So here what we see would be our source, direct, unknown, external website, YouTube channel page, and these are sources of information, sources where people found a video that we were trying to promote. And then you have the percentage of viewership. So I'm going to select both of these because mainly I'm concerned about where did it come from, and then the percent. Then we're going to go up to Insert, and we have plenty of options here. But we're going to choose Pie Chart, and we can choose 2D pie charts or 3D. Remember, you're going to be putting this in an analytical report, so sometimes keeping it simple could be a little easier. Sometimes if you do these blown apart and expanded pie charts, it can get a little confusing, but try it out and see what works for you. I'm going to click 2D pie chart, and it's actually going to come up right here. And it has a key right here for us to follow. Now, one thing you want to be cautious of is if you are printing this in black and white, you might want to use textures or start writing it inside the pie chart. But for here, it could be a little problematic because the sliver is so small here that we wouldn't be able to fit the text inside it. However, for your reports, you're going to be submitting them online, so you can definitely take advantage of the colors for this. Then it's just a matter of copying and pasting into your document. The next one we're going to go over is an organizational chart. And to be honest, you can do this in Excel, but it is going to be a lot easier in Microsoft Word. This is very similar to a table. Once again, very easy to read to kind of pick apart and figure out what's going on. So I'll show you how to do this in Word. I know most of you might know it already, but some of us might be a little more tech savvy than the others. So as I'm going to create this document in Word, I know that I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 columns, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to go to Table 3 by 5. And I'm used to a Mac, so bear with me as I try to get all this taken care of. And now I'm just going to enter in the variables. And percent. And let's even say we can give it a class designation. Let's see if I make a mistake while typing in front of people. Online, I usually do. And let's go in and enter the numbers. And just to kind of take a look at this and try to help it flow a little better, I'm going to go through. Let's not merge them, but I'm going to actually work on the table properties. So if you go here to borders and shadings, I'm actually going to get rid of the middle lines. And then I'm going to come over here. Once again, right mouse click, borders and shading. I'm going to get rid of the middle line this way. And then same thing with right here. And there are specific ways to do this format in APA style. I would consult the OWL website if you really want to make sure that everything is ready to go. And then I'm going to get rid of this one last section right in here. There we go. And then let's make this a specific color. You can go here, right mouse click, borders and shading. Shading right here, color, and let's do that orange. Then I'll come here. Once again, right mouse click, borders and shadings. Hopefully pick the same color. Great. Now here's where we want to build some contrast. We talked about the contrast in the other document. So we want to pick a similar color scheme. And so I'm going to pick right here and just go for a lighter orange color. I almost said blue. I lived in Denver for a few years, so I always have Broncos on the brain. Still have not recovered from that Super Bowl loss. All right, so I'm going to pick just a lighter orange. It's going to give some brief contrast. So right here, we actually have data that's easy to follow. And this should actually be a lowercase n. And then we have the class designation. And then we can just copy and paste that in the Word document. So once again, that was how you would do a table. So let's go over how to make your standard bar chart in Excel. So just like last time, we're actually going to select everything that we're going to take for putting into the bar chart. Once again, the information and kind of the variable. So we're going to come up here to the insert. We can choose column or bar. In Excel, the bars will go from left to right, and the columns are more up and down. For this one, I'm going to just choose a column, but it's the same thing for a bar chart. So we can see here that it brought in everything that we need. We can go through and change the specific colors if we'd like. You have options up here as well. But the first thing I need to do is give it a more specific title. So I'm just going to say percentage of views by source. And we can go through that. And you have a simple column chart, I guess, in this instance, to export to your analytical report. So let's go over how to make a line chart. And once again, a line chart is great for showing progression over time, whether it's the stock market, maybe cattle numbers. We're going through a pretty bad drought right now. So if you wanted to show over time what we would call the cattle cycle and how the numbers are affected throughout time, this would be a great way to show the rise and fall of the nation or a state's cattle numbers. So for here, I have a bunch of made up data that I just randomly typed in. Let's just say viewing habits of 18 to 29-year-olds. So it could be TV, YouTube, whatever we like. And I have some data here. So I'm actually going to click on the title of this cell too, drag down all the way to the bottom. Once again, insert, line chart. I have a bunch of different ones here. I'm just going to do a single 2D line chart. And it already brought in the title for us. And once again, we don't really need the legend here, because there's really only one set of data. So that is how we would do a line chart. Let's say you wanted to maybe compare two different things over time. So let's say I have 18 to 29-year-olds and 30 to 45-year-olds. So I'm going to do this a little differently this time. And I'm just going to select this. Once again, insert, line chart. There we go. And then I'm actually going to make sure that we keep the legend on this time because we have two data sets and we want to compare everything together with these two data sets. So in this instance, I would keep the legend on just because we have two variables here and we need to differentiate between the two of them. Once again, make sure that you go and give it a title. So now that we have these charts and we kind of went through how to use them, definitely implement them if your data allows it. So let's go over through some other design aspects in Word. Color options. Number one, because these are submitted electronically, the sky is the limit. However, if you are with a company and you're going to be printing a ton of these, you do pay more for more colors. So based on your budget, you're definitely going to want to make some decisions on what colors to implement. And if you're going to be printing a bunch of these, contact your printer to get a cost, and that'll help you identify it. However, it is going to be circulated online as submitted electronically in this class, so the sky's the limit, but just remember to keep to a basic color pattern that is simple. Once again, simple will never offend, and it might not be the flashiest thing in the world, but it's definitely always going to be in style. Once again, don't go crazy on those colors. Hypercolor died in the 80s for a good reason. Also, pick a few of them that go well together. So there are some time-honored colors. Once again, there's plenty you can go online with and find out what colors to go together. And you can manipulate the design to make it how you want it to be. Even though there is a template that's going to help you, once again, don't feel confined to that template. That template is a good starting point or a reference point. Another really easy thing to do is find a template that you like and then use that as an idea to create your own. So that way you can create anything you want. You're not stuck within a template. And create graphics. So when you are using graphics, so a big thing is that graphics should tell a story. It shouldn't appear as just a random picture or a random box or infographic or anything like that. A graphic should tell a simple story. And it should reinforce the text, not replace it. So for example, don't be thinking, oh, I can write 100 less words because I just have this picture that goes with it. You need both the graphic and the text elements to really create a good report. Once again, the graph should just visually reinforce the text that is already in place. And be ethical in your reporting, in your graphs. Not be biased. Once again, an analytical report is not persuasive. It isn't biased. It is simply stating what is there. And once again, all graphics should be properly labeled and placed on the page. Consult your book for the examples. They are very specific on this. You definitely need to include the sources of any graphs that you did not include. Once again, not citing your sources in written is plagiarism. It is also not ethical to cite your sources of where you get your visual information as well. The book, once again, has some examples. And use various kinds of graphics and tables. Don't just stick with pictures. Don't just stick with line charts. Mix it up, but make sure it is for a good reason and being purposeful with what you do. And use charts, once again, tell different stories. So take a look on K-State Online. I think Dr. Baker uploaded 4 or 5 examples for you to take a look at. These aren't perfect examples, but they definitely have some strong points to them. So learn from them, use them as some inspiration, don't copy them, and kind of branch off and do your own thing. But these ones we included have some very strong points that you should consider taking a look at. And once again, the book has a few examples as well. So lastly, when to use graphics, be purposeful with it. Don't just go online, find a picture of a really cool cat on a report on cats and put it in there. It should actually have a specific purpose. And once again, graphics should enhance, not distract. Always ask yourself before you put a graphic into your page, why am I doing this? By answering why am I doing this, and hopefully let you be a little more intentional in doing this and making sure that I'm putting this graphic in here to not distract or just to make it look pretty, but to serve a point. So that's the end of our presentation. Hopefully that this was a good resource for you. Feel free to email me once again if you have any questions at all. But I look forward to seeing your analytical reports, and please make sure that if you do have questions that you cannot find within the assignment sheet and you cannot find within the book or the sources I posted online, after checking those, feel free to email me and we can get things solved together. So enjoy. Once again, I hope this was helpful and have a great weekend.